You kissed your dad on the mouth?
Alright everyone, quick pop quiz. What does the I in LGBTQIA mean? Is it indigo blue? Nah, that's part of the B. Watch that video, by the way. Is it intro to video editing class? No, but the fact that I had to take that class despite, having this channel, really was crazy. Oh well, perks of transferring. Is it... Nope, it's intersex. Intersex is defined by the fact that there are people who are neither male nor female. We aren't talking about non-binary or gender-wise, so to speak, but rather sex-wise. Examples are, but not limited to, people who have female reproductive organs, but presenting and being male most of his life or her life or their life. Women who have different appearing parts than other women. Men who might have bigger breasts than other males, but having a penis. Or having an entirely different chromosome set. So if someone says that there's only XX and XY, it's not. It's not a strict binary at all. They're pretty wrong. Intersex, or being in between the genders or sex, is a concept that has been around for centuries. But the word intersex never came into public conscious until 1917, where it was referred to as physical sex ambiguities. Despite this, intersex advocates fought back against the stigmatization and reclaimed the word. The goal was to destigmatize the identities of intersex people and instead embrace their differences in a society that wants them to obey strict sex binaries. It wasn't until 1993 where sexologist Anne Fausto Sterling published The 5 Sexes, Why Male and Female Are Not Enough, where intersex gained even more notoriety in queer spaces. Hey, that's the year Power Rangers came out, so that's really cool. Nowadays, in the 20th century, you'll see intersex groups such as Interact and Intersex Equality, which will be linked in my description, advocate for intersex bodily autonomy, be it for infants to not get surgeries to make them automatically male or female, or allow them to be treated without losing their intersex identity. Despite how rare people might think it is, intersex is found in a lot of people, and they deserve as much as a voice as every other gay or trans person in the queer community, as they are, well, queer. The reason I ask and explain this is if there's one thing I do notice when it comes to the queer community, it's that intersex people are not really discussed or acknowledged. Just because intersex is uncommon or rare doesn't mean we should ignore their struggles or just pretend it's non-existent. Whenever I see intersex people brought up in LGBTQ discussions, it's only to be used against anti-trans rhetoric, which is good to counter and attack anti-trans rhetoric, as it is very harmful to trans and intersex people, but intersex people are more than just an argument against transphobes. It is good to advocate for gender-affirming care 100%, but at the same time, don't forget that intersex people also suffer and have their struggles, be it intersex people being forced into the gender binary via non-consensual surgeries because they aren't parasex or endosex, which are terms for people who are not intersex, such as me, who's someone who's not intersex. Intersex people on their own are their own identities, with their own experiences that differentiates from endosex queer people, including endosex, trans, and gay people. Heck, I have even seen people argue that intersex people are not queer at all, or that intersex people are just caught in the crossfire. Not only are a lot of intersex people also identify with other labels in the LGBTQ community such as gay or trans, etc., but also their status as intersex completely counters the cis heteronormative norms society puts on people, making them inherently queer. As someone who's not straight or not cis, they are still queer. And to say they are just simply caught in the crossfire is disingenuous, since laws that want to outlaw transitions want to also enforce intersex people to be confined to one sex on the sex binary that's popularized. The blindness to intersex identities is so common in the LGBTQ communities, be it intentionally or unintentionally, that it's frustrating. And even I, an endosex, caught myself doing this with my own queer experience, and I want to apologize for my blindness to my fellow intersex folks. I realized this. I knew that I couldn't just leave intersex people behind. As someone who's made videos covering LGBTQ mangas relating to identities, I knew I had to make a video, which is why I got my yaoi paddle ready, my deck set, and dove into intersex manga. And to say the mangas that I found were not only awesome but thought-provoking would be a huge understatement. So for this video, in true Kamen-o fashion, I decided to pick up and read intersex manga and highlight their stories and why intersex people should look into such. Thankfully, this search for the manga and manga's intersex themes was not hard at all, as not only is there one literally listed when you look up intersex manga on Google, we'll get to that later, But also, I found a manga that's an autobiography. At age 30, I realized I had no gender. It is not a fictional story like the other two manga I'll address, but rather a manga essay. The manga essay follows the life of mangaka Sho Arai and his life as an intersex person in Japan. The manga is short and follows the format of other 4-panel mangas like Bocchi, if that makes sense. The manga talks about his love life with his husband, who's a BL author, Ko Usaki. The series jumps from discussing what it's like to be an LGBTQ in Japan, reaching out to other sexual minorities, the struggle of being in a queer relationship with his husband, to even just daily life. Ultraman referenced! The manga addresses Arai's intersex as an experience and unique to him. At age 30, Arai found out he was intersex despite living as a girl for his entire life. Now, he lives as a man with his husband and does LGBTQ outreach for the communities in Japan. Arai in his manga talks about stuff usual intersex people deal with, such as body measurements, living with certain elements that might designate them as masculine or feminine, and also imagining a future if he aged as a woman. The story really adds a lot of nuance into intersex identities, not only because it's based off of Arai's real-life experience, but because it spills the thoughts Arai thinks of and the queer communities he interacts with. Arai lets it all out, and he wants readers to know it's his intersex story. Also, I really love how nonchalant Arai is with writing his experiences with other queer people. Arai holds nothing back and spills out what he deals with and how he reaches out to queer relationships and how he helps. Another example is talking about gender expression and how people pass as the gender they wish to be. Also, I find it really cute how Ko also gets a spotlight. Whether it's their married life and how they age and what they enjoy together. I mentioned this with I Want to Be a Wall, but I really love whenever writers either intentionally or unintentionally show solidarity between two queer identities, and in this case, unintentionally since it's his partner, gay and intersex solidarity. Their relationship is so cute, and I love how Arai portrays it as just a regular couple that dreams of one day marrying together. This is cute, and of course, like with aces, trans, lesbians, and bis, gay and intersex solidarity forever, guys. I'll have your back. I can talk about this manga more, but I do feel like No Gender, the life of a queer intersex manga artist, does such a better job diving into his life and his outreach in Japan's LGBTQ spaces. I would cover it, but considering it's a documentary and not a Jdrama, it tells you the story right there. Not to mention, you also meet another intersex activist in Hong Kong, Small Luke, which I'll gladly talk about her story for a bit. Small Luke is considered Hong Kong's first out intersex person who has been fighting for intersex inclusion in LGBTQ spaces in Hong Kong. And I have to say, I wish her luck and I support her. She's definitely welcomed in LGBTQ spaces in America. Hopefully Hong Kong will warm up to intersex identities over there. Also, I'm a sucker for documentaries and queer experiences, and I'm a sucker for documentaries on the queer experience, so I really like it and I definitely recommend it. Anyways, let's move into fictional manga stories. Luckily, this is the one you'll literally get with the Wikipedia and the My Anime list the minute you search up intersex manga in Google. IS, or Iesu Otoko demo Onna de no Naise by Chiyo Rokuhana, is an interesting manga that dives into the lives of intersex people and the way they take the knowledge of them being intersex and what they do with it in a modern society. This one follows case files. 3 people that realize they are intersex and how they come to terms with loving and supporting their identities. In a sense, this manga is 2 one-shots and a third manga that takes both one-shot elements and makes it stronger. So I'm going to dive into all 3 with as much depth as I could. The first 2 cases involve Hiromi and Ryoma and how they learned they were intersex and reflecting on their identities both before and after the revelation. For Hiromi, it's about coming to terms that even if she is intersex, she can still live as the intersex person she wishes to be without having the sex organs she needs. Also, it's really sweet how Hiromi's name is gender neutral by her mom, so if she chose to transition, it'd be easier for her. She shows that there's more than just men and women in sex, and how it's not binary, much like body types. For Ryoma, it's about finding new revelations as a woman. After realizing she's intersex, she decided to transition and be happy, especially when she realizes that she can be the girl she wants to be, despite living as a man prior. What I like about this story is that it shows how some intersex people are indeed trans, and they transition, just like any intersex trans people. It also shows her reconnect with family, and that's a good aspect. These are short, and we instead just have the rest of the manga focus on Haru, and not just Haru, but we also get a Jdrama that stars Haru's stories, as well as the book. Wait a second, don't I know that actor from anywhere? After Hiromi and Ryoma's story, it continues to focus on Haru and Haru's journey as an intersex person. Ever since birth, Haru has been struggling with the fact that he is intersex and struggling with trying to fit in as the man he wishes to be. Haru in the manga is not only just the token intersex character, as we also see him struggle with bullying, faulty doctors, his dream to own a cooking restaurant, and he also collects sports cards. Oh my goodness, I just know he and Mogumu were in the Walmart trading card section fighting for their lives just to get their own cards from the scalpers, because I didn't win, because I still need some magic booster. Overall, we see Haru not only be the intersex manga protagonist, but a person who is intersex and how he explores what it means to be intersex in the 21st century. Not to mention, the atmosphere the manga gives, especially in its opening chapters for Haru's story, is one of discovery. Never in the manga does it have things be set for certain, but rather explores. For example, a big part of Haru's journey is Kenji, a boy he found love in. Kenji loves Haru, and Haru loves Kenji. However, he is afraid of judgment for being intersex. Not to mention, at this point, Haru was more expressing his feminine side and being perceived as a woman. It ranges from pretending as a girl and getting tired of it, to keeping distance to figure his path himself. I also love how Haru comes face to face with all forms of gender expression and learns that there is no lines. There is no line that defines men and women, no line that defines gender identity, and no line that defines gender roles. For example, his interaction with Usami, a gender non-conforming girl that not only helps Haru get in touch with their feminine side more comfortably, but also helps Haru understand gender better, despite being endosex herself. She also promises to fight anyone that bullies Haru, and that's just the sweetest, because me personally, I am also ready to fight on behalf of my intersex siblings, so I'm ready to go. We also get to see people who's intersex, but in worse circumstances. In the chapters, we see Haru's family being more accepting to the idea of intersex, and not quick to rush him into being a gender, be it male or female. Haru gets to grow up as what Haru wants to, and his parents love him. However, not all the intersex characters in the story get that luck. For example, the young Miwako, an intersex person who was forced to be a girl because of her mom. Ashamed of her intersex identity, her mom wants to force her to become the perfect girl and erase from the world she was intersex. I love how this helps Haru take the initiative to not only protect Miwako and her intersex identity, but also motivate her to help speak up for her intersex people. Haru is motivated to confront the envy of male bodies, and even if the result wasn't the best, it still shows he has friends that will always support him. I also love how it challenges Miwako to reshape and think about what it means to be perfect. Miwako challenges the idea of a perfect woman and humbles her mother, stating that she doesn't need unnecessary surgeries to be the woman and present as the woman she wants to be. I love this message and shows gender expression through the lens of an intersex person, not someone who's endosex. I just love this manga's message and statements about intersex people. It shows that intersex people are not those that need to be policed by what is important for society, or that they have to strictly adhere to the sex binary. It rather just shows them as their authentic self. Another theme I saw from this manga is strength. Strength to keep being yourself, and strength to define your future for yourself and others. And not only is it illustrated through Haru's struggle to love his body, but also his lover, Kenji. Kenji is a character that never wanted to be around people he deems weak, as he wants to be seen as normal. This ranges from dumping Haru after learning he's intersex, to in a flashback, abandoning his disabled sister to look natural, resulting in her getting injured. After all, in a society where men are meant to be seen as dominant with no burdens, where else was Kenji to go? Throughout the manga, we see him grow and have more compassion for others, and his ending is so satisfying, seeing him become a teacher, want to protect and understand others, and even reuniting and hinting at a relationship with Haru. The ending of this manga and the final chapter is just a fuzzy warm hug. It's a hug for endosex people saying thank you for taking your time to understand and listen, and a hug for intersex people saying thank you for existing, and that no matter what, you, as an intersex person, matters. If there's one thing that might be the same with all of these, is that they're just IRL. Any series can have, like, someone who's intersex in real life and struggle with dating, or forced surgeries by their parents because they think intersex is evil. But what about stories that have, knights, roses, family, kings,
queens, dragons, dwarves, horses, fortresses, magic, and...
What's one series that has an intersex protagonist and does more than just show how it plays into modern society? Luckily for you, I got one that I fell in love with despite how confusing it can be, and that is Requiem of the Rose King. Published in the shoujo manga Monthly Princess from 2013 to 2022, Requiem of the Rose King is by far one of the most unique mangas I've covered on this channel, as it actually serves as a dramatic adaptation of the Shakespeare's Henry VI and Richard III. It is England in the Middle Ages, and two houses of roses battle for control, the Red Rose House of Lancaster and the White Rose House of York. The manga follows a young Richard III, a prince of House York, whose father was murdered by House Lancaster. However, despite being royalty, he is despised by his mother and viewed as a cursed demon. The reason? Richard is one born with both sexes, neither a male or female, but both male and female. The story is heavily focused on Richard's perspective through these warring times, not only as he witnesses the fall of York and the death of his father, but the discrimination he faces because he is intersex, be it being shunned by his mother or saying how he can never take the throne because he is a demon that will cause morality to fall in England. With Richard being intersex, the mangaka plays so much with this concept to explore gender in these times. For example, the author is not afraid to show Richard in girl clothes and how he uses it as an advantage to trick enemies and sneak into a tower to free his brother. Another great way it plays with gender is that Richard is haunted by the ghost of Joan of Arc, who teases him for his intersex body. I love how Joan is there to remind Richard not that he's a girl, but that he's intersex and that he'll never be the perfect hair like his brothers. I just love the contrast and how she's always there as a part of Richard's consciousness, showing his own growth by himself as she slowly fades away from the story. And if you watch the anime, this might be a hot take, but I love the art style and the way it presents like a moving storybook. It's such a romantic vibes of something you read in a fairy tale before you go to bed, and it really adds to the Elden style the series wants you to feel. Requiem of the Rose King not only just explores Richard overcoming the odds, but also trying to bring pride to a house that shunned him. Not only that, Richard also struggles in finding love and companionship on his own accord, be it the shy Anne, who at first rejects him, but quickly changes her view, to Henry VI, the actual rival house who Richard grows to love unknowingly. I genuinely loved seeing their relationship blossom and grow, only for it to be a betrayal after Richard finally realizes that Henry is, in fact, the king of the house that killed his father. We also see Richard bond with Gatesby, who has been with Richard since the beginning, his brothers, and a boar he rescued, who's really cute. Another good relationship that is formed is Richard's second lover, the Duke of Buckingham. The Duke is an interesting character, as he's introduced early on as this somewhat antagonistic, somewhat rude guy, and then suddenly falls in love with Richard. Throughout the story, we not only see their relationship grow closer and intimate, but he also helps Richard realize his true desire to be king. Whereas Henry brought forth Richard's quieter and more pacifist side, Duke brought forth Richard's bloodlust and kingly side, the one that calls him to the throne. Duke brought out Richard's strength and pursuit to fulfill a dream he was ashamed of having. From there, Duke's love with Richard grew, and we see them go from this awkward duo to a romantic couple. I will say this, the characters are what really make Richard's story stands out, mainly because the plot itself, like Shakespeare, is all over the place and confusing for someone who's not invested in Shakespeare, but that's not a bad thing, honestly. I just love how hectic and weird it can be, because it really does call back to Shakespeare's original works, despite the weird twists and points. For example, seeing Edward's tenure up until death was an interesting read while Richard's plot still continued. And another point that I saw Colleen's Manga Rex mentioned in her video about gender expression in manga is that as someone who presents and identifies as a man, Richard falls into harmful gender tropes of the patriarchy in a desperate attempt to present as a man. After hearing that quote from Colleen and then flipping back into the pages, especially after his father's death, I realized something, and Colleen was right about this. Richard fell into toxic masculinity. Why is it so important when other series have done this trope already? Well, this time, it's not an endosex man who has to prove his manliness for the sake of winning the girl or being the king, but an intersex person who clings so desperately to be a man to avoid the shame of being intersex. Being someone who's between the sexes will not do Richard good in this society, and considering the burden put onto him after his father's death, he knew he had to be a man like any other endosex man. His life is hell, and that's all it will be. That is, until he grows throughout his experiences, realizes that the men he loved and or idolized were not perfect, and instead carve his own path to being the king. But not just any king, an intersex king. Instead of having life be hell, he owns it. Richard is such a strong character, who not only proves his valid identity as a man, but also as an intersex king who grew to love his body. The final chapter where he's defeated in battle, and like Shakespeare's left ambiguous of his fate. I don't know. I flunked Shakespeare and it looks like he either died or not. I don't know. It's just showing Richard being not only the king he is, but accepting his body. He is a man of both sexes and neither sex. But regardless, he is his father's king till the very end.
Is that Sosuke Aizen?
These 3 mangas are ones that show intersex struggle, intersex values, and more importantly, why it is so important to include intersex people and LGBTQ communities. There are people like Miwako who are forced to get surgeries and lose their identity as intersex, let alone hated. There are people like Richard who try too hard to hide their intersex identity and they fall into bad habits. And also regarding the surgery aspect, there's another element I want to touch. Be warned, this revolves political discourse of today, so if you're sensitive to that, there will be a time skip, as well as the historical facts since it's a bit depressing. Of course, time skips in the description. It's no stranger that anti-LGBTQ bills are on the rise, most notably anti-trans bills. One notable bill is Kansas's Bill of Rights law, which not only removes trans people's rights to identify as who they are and change gender identity, but also bars them from using the bathroom they please. But what I fail to see anyone bring up regarding this is how it also attacks intersex people too. Not only does it bar intersex people from using the proper bathroom, they are classified as disabled and forced into a separate bathroom space for disabled people. No, that is not how all gender bathrooms or accessibility bathrooms work. That's just flat out interphobic or intersexist, and this is the beginning of it. You know that conservative fear-mongering tactic that's like, trans people are mutilating kids to meet trans at a young age. Oh, trans people are killing your kid, yada yada yada. Despite proof that it's literally not happening and there are certain age requirements for certain gender reassignment surgeries, well, it's happening to intersex babies and children. Intersex babies and children are being forced into hormones and surgery to ensure they fit into the XX and XY binary that they claim to exist. Why is this not banned? Yet trans healthcare for trans youth banned. Simple. The people who make and pass these laws don't actually care about protecting the children. They just want to harm not only trans youth, but also erase intersex youth, as well as intersex people entirely. I think what's also demeaning is that these consequences are not being recognized in queer spaces. We will unfortunately hear about how this hurts trans youth, but we also fail to hear how this hurts intersex people. This also goes for LGBTQ censorship laws too, as intersex people are also erased by such. It's horrible to see this, and also horrible that intersex people are not getting the proper voice in the queer community. But much like how we include ace, bi, lesbian, and trans identity in the LGBTQ community, they deserve to be included too, because intersex people have always been suffering, and that is seen on November 8th. November 8th is usually seen as Intersex Day of Remembrance, the day that is used to remember the injustices and discrimination faced by intersex people, be it the stigma they face or the non-consensual surgeries they go in our society that demands sex be binary. This day was chosen because it was the birthday of an intersex woman in France, Herculine Barbin. Barbin's story is indeed a sad one, so if you want to skip, there's a timestamp. Born on November 8th, 1838 in France, Barbin lived her life as a woman who happened to love women too, until her puberty, when the doctors confirmed she was intersex because of her private parts being different than the usual female private parts. Because of this, and the fact that she had this genital deformity, she was forced to live as a male, deprived of the womanhood she loved, and the intersex identity as well. Her memoirs recount the trauma she lived, and how intersex surgery made her miserable. She eventually ended her life at the young age of 29, with the memoirs being one of the few things we have that tell her story. She may not have been an activist, nor someone that has been memorialized in pop culture, but Herculine Barbin showcases the cruelty intersex people face. Barbin's story is important because it shows that intersex people have been around, yet they are treated with such disrespect and not given the time of day to be themselves. In fact, some people are probably going to just ignore the idea of her being intersex and say this is another anti-trans reason, you know, like surgery and all that. And I want to say no, this isn't to fuel your transphobic beliefs at all, and I denounce such transphobia. And at the same time, I 100% denounce interphobia and intersexism, not only in society or in the medical field, but in our own LGBTQ community themselves. Intersex identities are queer, and our struggles are intertwined. They are more than just an argument, more than just their sexuality and gender, and more than just people who are victims. They are human, who demand the same thing we LGBTQ folks want: to be humanized. The people who want to outlaw and ban gay and trans people will not stop at us, and will gladly outlaw intersex people at the flick of a pen. They want to hurt us. The fact is, intersex people are fighting for what we want. The right to bodily autonomy, the right to define our sex, gender identity, and the right to break free of the traditional binary that the world wants us to believe, and the right to exist as ourselves in public's faces without scrutiny. Like how there are more than two sexualities, more than two genders, there are more than two sexes. And Herculine Barbine tells us this story. You can be a woman in intersex, you can be a man in intersex, you can be non-binary in intersex, but at the end of the day, you still matter and are just as important to the queer community as anyone else is. Herculine Barbine, I am sorry for this life and how they treated you, but I want to let you know that as a gay man who supports intersex identities, your story will not be in vain, and I'll continue fighting for intersex folks and their right to exist as who they are. And to the intersex people who are watching this, do not be discouraged and do not feel demotivated. I got your back for life. It's LGBTQIA, and damn right I will support the I as much as I support all the other letters in the alphabet. We're together in this, and I believe in you guys. You guys can be just as awesome as Haru, just as great as Arai, who's still alive today and kicking, and of course just as cool and as romantic as Richard III. So if you have the time, please check out these mangas, please read them, and think about intersex identities. The one thing that I'll love about reading these mangas is that it changed my worldview of intersex identities, and I'm thankful for it, because now I feel as a stronger ally to intersex people, and I'll gladly understand and listen to more intersex people in the comments. Thank you so much. Hopefully this video gets out on time, because today, if hopefully it gets it out, would be Intersex Awareness Day on October 26, 2023. It's not just Five Nights at Freddy's movie Eve, it's also a day to bring awareness to intersex identities. And to that, I want to say thank you so much for watching, and make sure to support intersex identities and intersex people in your life. I put the links for the groups Intersex Equality and Interact in the description. Make sure to check it out. And of course, if you're watching this trying to think this is some transphobic nonsense, absolutely not. I denounce any transphobia and interphobia and intersexism, as trans and intersex identities are intertwined in the fight to bodily autonomy. And also, any intersexist or interphobic comments will be deleted. This is a safe space for intersex identities and for them to blossom and be who they are. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you have the time, please check me out on TikTok, on Instagram, on Tumblr. If you have any questions, shoot it to me. Donate to my Ko-fi if you can. I'm a college student. Make sure to subscribe, like, and comment, and share. Other than that, thank you so much and have a great day. And remember, this G got their eyes back for life. You know what I mean.